Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, this is Andy Strickler. I am currently the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Connecticut College, located in New London, Connecticut. I've also worked in athletics and admissions at Kalamazoo College, Beloit College, Sinus College, and Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. This week in the news, Andy Strickler is back, and it's Andy as you've grown to love him, unfiltered, bold, and speaking truth to power. So in this segment, Andy goes through all 40 AP classes, and he tells us which ones he believes are the most rigorous, which ones are rigorous but not the most rigorous, and then there's one that he sounds off on, he is not a fan of. And while we have caveats and make it very clear, this is Andy's view only, I will tell you there was not one single classification that he gave that surprised me. He categorized every single one of these AP courses the way I would expect others would categorize them as well, based on, conversations with lots of chief enrollment officers. So that's segment number one. And then we have a brand new interview, and it's with Stephen Master. And Stephen is an expert in all things related to sports management, sports business, careers in sports. And you may know this, or you may not, but sports careers are absolutely going bananas, ballistic. They're blowing up. So just like we talked about cybersecurity a couple of years ago is on fire, sports management, sports business, sports marketing, it's on fire. And we talk about really everything related to sports management. Like, how do you break into sports? What are careers in sports? It's really an FAQ, and it's with an expert in the field. And then we transition to our college spotlight. And I mentioned to you, friends, a while ago, I was doing a 6-part interview series with students that I've worked with in the past and just bringing you different student voices. Now it's 4 students over 6 weeks. So you've already heard from Sam and Samantha the last 2 weeks. And the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear from Carmen Chavez. She's been on our podcast before, but it was 5.5 years ago. And so she's going to be giving you a breakdown on her Duke experience. She's going to talk about what she thinks Duke does very well, what Duke could improve on. And you'll hear that this week and next week. Friends, I'm really excited about all 3 of these segments. I just think some of our episodes may be a little bit better than others. And I think all 3 of these segments are ones that are going to help a lot of people. So listen and enjoy.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
So I couldn't think of a better person to talk to than Andy. I've asked him to give his perception. We understand we're going to do some qualifiers here. This is his view. Somebody might have a different view.
Totally.
But we're going to go through AP courses. And I've asked Andy to categorize them according to his perception of whether he would say this school is very rigorous.
For that course.
Rigorous, AP light, or maybe don't know, no opinion. Some of them aren't taken by that many people. So let's start out with English, Lang, and Comp.
Both English APs are intense, rigorous classes. We like seeing those on the transcript. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep. AP Lang and AP Lit. We like both of those.
Yeah, feel free to throw in a little commentary just like that when you see it too. All right, let's get into the histories. European history.
Yep. Love it.
There, okay.
Yep.
US history.
Same thing.
Okay. What about human geography?
We tend to think that's a little bit lower rigor than US and Euro. we're still going to give it credit to be AP course material, AP course work. We're not going to see that anecdotally quite as strong as U.S. and European history.
Mm-hmm. World?
Yep, we like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's up there.
What about AP psychology?
Is that a 1 semester or 2 semester class? The AP curriculum itself is equivalent to a 1 semester college level introduction to psych. So it can be done both ways.
So what do you think?
We're going to have that a little bit down the pecking order, mainly because for some folks it's going to be a 1 semester class.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not up there with, some of the ones that we are going to consider to be real heavy hitter type of classes.
Like World and Euro and US.
Yep.
Now, would it make a difference if someone took it for 2? Would you then categorize it that way, or would it still kind of be maybe
still
in the rigorous?
In that secondary category
Okay.
is how we're thinking about it.
Rigorous,
typically.
but not necessarily very.
Yep.
Okay. What about macro and microeconomics?
Solid. And one of the conversations that we have almost on an annual basis, okay, is AP micro is 1 semester, AP macro is 1 semester. So do we give the student credit for 1 AP class or 2 AP classes?
And where do you come out on that?
We're in the 1 to 1.5 range. That's how we typically look at it, because they're 1 semester classes. And is it fair to just say that's 1 AP class? Not necessarily. Is it fair to say it's 2 AP classes? We've kind of landed in this. It's kind of like 1.5.
It makes sense.
And that's where we're starting to get into the nuanced conversation around rigor, because some folks are going to say, well, that's definitely 2 AP classes. But for us, it's 1 semester of an AP class and 1 semester of an AP class. Whereas AP Calc is going to be 1 semester, but it's 1. So that's where the rigor conversation is going to get nuanced for us as we start thinking about that type of thing.
Modern history, I don't see that on the transcript as much as a lot of the others.
No, we don't see that much at all.
Do you have a thought on it?
Well, secondary level, second level is where I put
level?
it. Yeah.
A brand new one, African American Studies.
Haven't seen that. So
Too new.
Too new. Don't really have an opinion on it.
Yeah. Let's go to math classes. So
Great.
I'll ask you 2 at the same time. Calc AB, Calc BC, thoughts?
Calc BC is the varsity level right at the top. AB is just like a half step behind it. That's biased because I took AB in high school instead of toughing it up and taking BC. So that's kind of the Andy, let's bump him up a little bit. But it's AP Calc.
Sure.
We like both.
Right.
But obviously the BC is going to be kind of the highest echelon that we would see in the math sequence.
But you'd make a difference if a school also has a Calc non-AP option. You'd be differentiating between that AB versus the Calc non-AP.
Exactly.
Yeah. Computer science A and computer science principles.
That's just like a half step behind AP Calc AB is what we're thinking.
Okay. All right.
At least internally.
Yep. And then statistics.
Right there with the comp sci. Yep.
Friends, I totally forgot to ask Andy about the new AP Pre-Calc. But Andy brings up AP Pre-Calc on his own in about 2 minutes, and he could not be more crystal clear what he thinks about the new AP Pre-Calc and its rigor. Let's transition to the sciences. So okay. I'll throw 2 at a time. Bio and chem.
Love them both. Love them both. We would put those at the top of the science curriculum.
Environmental science.
Half step behind.
Physics 1 algebra based, because there's Physics 1 algebra based, and there's a lot of physics, as you know, right? You've got the Physics 1 algebra based, you got the Physics 2 algebra based, you got the Physics C mechanics, you got the Physics C electricity and magnetism. Why don't you just talk about all of those physics and tell me what your thoughts are?
We're going to see them in kind of an ascending order there, Physics A, algebra based, etc., going to be at the bottom. We're going to gradually sort of tier them up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to stress, because what we're doing here is we're looking at singular AP courses and coursework, right?
Right.
And we're seeing the tree, but in some respects, we're not seeing the forest. So for us, we're looking at individual courses, but critical as we're looking at a transcript is taking a step back and seeing the forest. Okay.
When you say the forest, are you referring partly to what does your school offer? And we're looking at you in the context of the school, or are you talking about something different there?
No, I'm talking about the choice within the transcript itself. So if we see a student who has taken 4 AP classes and they're taking AP Human Geography, AP Econ, AP Psych, and
Environmental
AP
science.
Physics A or AP Environmental Studies, that's 4 AP classes,
Sure.
but it's got a certain feel to it.
Sure.
Versus a student who's taking 4 AP classes, and those 4 would be AP Calc BC, AP Language and Comp, AP US History, and AP Physics C.
Sure.
Both are going to have 4 AP classes, but one selection of APs is going to feel very different than the second one. So that's where we need to take these individual sort of course feelings that we have and take a step back and look at the forest, which is the collection of trees that we see.
That makes a lot of sense.
And
It's
try
the
to get a
totality.
sense is, are we taking APs for the sake of taking APs, or are we taking APs and the collection of APs adds up to a super duper rigorous selection of courses, if that makes sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It's the totality that formed the overall impression.
Yes.
More so than, oh my goodness, this
Yeah.
kid took AP Light over here, but the rest
Yeah.
of it is rigorous, and overall it's a rigorous curriculum.
So, one of the things we said is AP Psych. Oh, okay, that's below AP US and AP European, right?
Right.
So we're dinging AP Psych. But if they're also taking AP Spanish and they're taking AP Bio and AP Language and Comp and AP Calculus BC, that AP Psych is, yeah, that's great. We love it because we're taking 5 AP classes. One of them might be a little bit lower on the scale, but the other 4 are like super heavy hitter AP courses. And as a result, we're going to look at that and be like, yeah, we love it. There's a lab science in there. There's AP Calculus in there. AP Language and Comp. These are the most rigorous courses in their various disciplines at their school. And maybe the kid just likes psych and doesn't want to steer to AP US History because, oh, that's quote unquote more rigorous. That's fine. It's the complexion of all of those things put together that becomes the true mosaic of the transcript that we're looking at.
And I mean, this goes without being said. The 99 in the moderately rigorous AP is different than the 73 in the harder one as well, right? So,
absolutely.
So, yeah. Right. Let's talk languages.
Yeah.
So, as you know, there's Chinese language and culture, there's French language and culture, there's German language and culture, there's Italian language and culture, there's Japanese language and culture, there's Latin,
Yep.
Spanish language and culture, and then there's a Spanish literature and culture.
Guess what?
I'm going to say you like them all.
We love them all.
Yeah. All of them top tier?
Absolutely. Because what it signifies to us is commitment, passion, intensity, and willingness to challenge. Okay. A lot of folks are going to get through 2 years of a language and be like, all right, I've fulfilled my graduation requirements. I'm out. These are students who have continued, who have pushed themselves and have chosen the highest rigor in that discipline across their high school. So we're going to love them all.
Love it. Let's talk the art. There's the art visual performing stuff, right? You've got
Yep.
art history. You've got music theory. You've got studio art. You've got 2D design.
Yep.
3D design. Studio art drawing. I just kind of throw it out to you collectively and tell me what your thoughts are.
Solid. But for a liberal arts college like us, we're not going to see them in the same light as AP Calc BC, AP Lit and Comp, AP US, and AP Language, AP Bio. We're not going to see it in the same light because, while we may have fantastic art programs, the core of our work are the core liberal arts, which are reflected in the other APs. So we're going to credit the student with an AP, but if their only AP class is AP music theory and everything else in the senior year across to the rest of their academics are rigor-wise the next sort of track below it, there's going to be some interpretive stuff that goes into that in terms of rigor of the overall curriculum.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is where I hear different feedback. So a lot of times when schools recalculate a GPA and they're looking at their core or their solids, they'll look at math, English, science, social studies, foreign language, and some of them throw in like an AP studio art in there and some don't. Do you find most tend to focus more on those five, the first five? That's my sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
When we're recalculating GPAs, it's based on the 5 core subjects.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that the GPA doesn't drive the full academic assessment rating.
Sure.
We calculate a GPA because we need to report it to institutional research. We're looking at larger sort of performance metrics, having our own internal assessment tool. And for a student who submits an art portfolio or a music portfolio and has self-identified as someone who is interested in the arts or music, we subjectively are going to include those performance metrics inside our own internal assessment tool, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So we're down to 2 more, AP SEM and AP Research. What are your thoughts on these classes?
Both are solid. Both show intellectual curiosity. We're going to put them below kind of the heavy hitters, but only a half step behind them for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this new AP pre-calc, what is the thought of that? I mean, I know it's new, but what is the thinking out there?
I don't know. I think we got to get David, what's his name, from the College Board on and explain the theory behind it, because I have no idea why, and sometimes when I'm traveling around and I want to joke about curriculum, I'm like, we don't want a senior year filled with like underwater firefighting and basket weaving. And then I'm like, your most rigorous class is AP weightlifting, which is a full credit physical education class. There's part of me that's like, why are we doing an AP pre-calc? I can't really wrap my head around the why that class is offered.
Well, it's hard. It's hard for me not to cynically think that it's going to bring a lot of money into the College Board.
That's why I wanted you to have him on the podcast and you ask the question and see him tap dance around why they're doing it. So
last time I checked, Coleman was making $2.7 million a year. Pretty good money.
Coleman's doing okay.
you know.
So for us, if we see AP pre-calc and we don't see any other AP classes, in terms of our assessment process and the average applicant at Connecticut College, we're almost to the point where we're not going to really see that as a full AP course compared to the rest of the applicant pool.
Let's talk about AP scores, Andy, because I hear all kinds of things when it comes to AP scores. There's some of the schools, especially at, as you like to say, the top of the food chain, they put a pretty big emphasis on them, especially if you're test optional.
Right.
I've heard that language come very strongly from the Dukes and the Emorys and the Cornells and MIT, Stanford. Yale's gone now to an option of test flexible. We'll see, we'll allow you to only submit that. And some of them have even said they like AP scores more. And then I'll talk to other people that say, we don't look at them. They're just a complete non-factor. So tell me what your thoughts are on them, and, give me your sense and just kind of the sense of other chief enrollment officers who you talk to about, like, you see a kid has got, 8 5s and 2 4s. It seems pretty impressive to me.
And it's hard not to see that when you're flipping through that part of the app. We don't require them. We don't have a formalized way in which they're incorporated into our academic assessment. For us, the critical thing we're trying to assess is a student's willingness to challenge themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Success at a small liberal arts college is defined by, I think, three things, or it's influenced by three things. First is, there is some quotient of intellectual horsepower that leads to success at places like this. But I would say that's smaller than the other two. And the other two are you willing to challenge yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And are you willing to seek out assistance when the challenge is pushing you to grow and develop beyond where you've maybe grown and developed before, academically and intellectually? So for us, it's seeing a student who has the willingness to challenge themselves,
Mm-hmm.
which is most important to us in the process. If we see AP scores, we can't unsee them.
I'm sure a bunch of ones make an impression on you too. And there's always a public school
The
kid.
funny thing is that I can't remember ever seeing a bunch of ones. I can remember seeing a bunch of twos.
Right.
But then the question I'm asking is that more reflective of the student, or is that more reflective of the high school environment in which they've taken those AP courses?
There's certainly a lot of truth to the second, because
Absolutely.
Because, and if you need any more proof of that, like I'll give you an example. So when I was at Westtown, we moved away from the AP curriculum.
Yep.
But Kurt Wicks, the chemistry teacher, liked the AP curriculum. We called everything advanced. So his kids would routinely get 5s when they would go take the test.
Right.
Other people in English or history, they moved so far away from that curriculum that they're gonna probably struggle to get a 3 because they'd only covered 40% or whatever the material. So
exactly.
I've seen that correlation between the teacher and the score.
Yeah.
Even there's a school, I don't know if you know the school, Durrell. It's a charter school in Miami.
Okay.
And those kids crank out crazy AP scores.
Right.
And some of it is the teaching, and some of it is how much of you concentrate on the test in the teaching.
Right.
That too. So there's a lot of components of that, but then it's hard because it doesn't mean nothing, because it's something about content mastery of subject material. I know it's really nuanced.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, friends, this concludes this segment where Andy and I went through all 40 AP classes, but Andy's back one more time to continue just talking about a wide range of different things. A lot of it is test score related, but a lot of you have told us that you kind of like it when a couple professionals just click the mic and talk and we bounce around. And so I've listened to you, and that's kind of what Andy and I do next week. We bounce around and hit about 6 or 7 subjects that I think will be of interest to you. I think you're going to enjoy that. So come back next week for the final part. Okay, friends, it's time for a brand new interview. It's with Stephen Master, and he's an expert in sports management and careers in sports.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I want to give a shout out to Carrie Roberts. Carrie's a college counselor, a member of our listening family, huge supporter. Will often text me and email me, just always positive, uplifting things. She'll be like, really like such and such in that episode or whatever. So she reached out to me and said, I've got a great idea for the podcast. And she connected me with Stephen Master. By the way, I really welcome all of you to do that. I can't promise I'm going to say yes, but I will promise that I will vet them and absolutely consider it. I mean, some of our best interviews I feel we've had recently on the podcast came from recommendations. Just to name a few recent ones, Daniel Chambliss, Hamilton College, author of the book on how college works. That was a referral. Bob Massa, worked at over 5 colleges before retiring, starting his own consulting company. Grant Gosselin, Chief Admission Officer, Boston College. And an interview I just did yesterday with Tom Ellett of Quinnipiac University, which you'll hear on episode 593 and 595. And the list goes on. Lisa just did an interview with Luther College in Iowa. And that came because a podcast listener left a message on SpeakPipe recommending we interview Luther College. Now, if you're going to do a referral, do it the way the podcast listener did. Do it the way Carrie did. Secure the commitment from the interviewee get their approval that they're willing to come on, because we don't want to fight through gatekeepers and do all that. That's a cold, we just don't have time for that, to be honest. We have too many other things to do. But if you can line them up and get their consent and approval, we'll vet them. And, they won't have to deal with this, persuading and all that, getting through gatekeepers. All right, let's transition to an overview of the interview with Stephen Master. So Stephen shares his impressive resume, his background, what he's doing now when it comes to careers in sports management. Stephen lets us know what is sports management? How does he define it? And he tells us how sports has become big business, and he talks about the range of jobs, the range of careers many have not even heard of or were unheard of 5 years ago. And Stephen talks to us about that. He talks about 400 different colleges that have some type of program right now that help prepare students for careers in sports management. He tells us about the kind of person who's going to be a great candidate for sports business. He tells us about the skill set that you're going to need to have to be successful in a career in sports management. He tells us what he feels are some of the best programs or colleges in the country for sports management, and some of the different majors that you can pursue besides just a sports management degree to break into the career. And then he closes with the most important thing he wants every student to know when it comes to breaking into sports business. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I'm here with Stephen Master. Welcome to your College Bound Kid podcast, Stephen.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, no, this is exciting to me, and special thanks to one of our listeners who recommended you. So before we get into our topic, which I'm really excited about, why don't you share your background, your backstory, anything that you think the listeners will benefit from, the context from your experiences as we get more into our topic today.
Yeah, well, happy to give my career progression and how I got into sports, because that's what we're here to talk about. So basically, I graduated. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in the Chicago area, and I went to the University of Michigan. So go Blue for all those Michigan fans. And after graduating from the University of Michigan, I was in the undergraduate business program. I got a job in investment banking. So I moved back to Chicago, worked in investment banking, and then decided I wanted to potentially do something different. So I went back to business school. I stayed in Chicago, went to Northwestern. So was fortunate enough to get into the Kellogg School of Management. And as I was wrapping up my first year and I was looking for an internship, I made kind of the conscious decision that I wanted to pursue something that I was really passionate about. And as much as banking was a good potential career, I wanted, at least for my internship, try something different. So I took a plane out to LA and tried sports entertainment. I slept on my buddy's couch from high school, and I set up 9 coffee chats. And that was before the days of LinkedIn. So I basically reached out on the phone to every Michigan alum and every Northwestern alum who worked in the sports entertainment business. And like I said, set up all these coffee chats. And I met a woman who I'm still friends with today, who worked at Disney at the time. And she said, "Hey, Stephen, you seem like a great guy. We just bought this company called ESPN." And I'm like, "ESPN?" She said, "Yeah, that's it." So she gave me my start. And that summer I got a job at the Disney company and really, really enjoyed it. And it was a fantastic place to kind of learn a little bit about the sports business, and also, most importantly, get my foot in the door. That's the key when you're talking to people who want to get into the sports or entertainment business, is just getting that first break. And that internship kind of really helped propel my career. So when I got back to my second year at Northwestern, I was looking for jobs in that space because I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought it was super different and interesting than doing a career in banking. So I had a bunch of interviews and was fortunate enough to get a job at the NBA. And at the time, that was the mid-90s, the NBA was expanding globally. So they were looking for business school students to help build that NBA brand around the world. And that was my first kind of real job in sports. And I spent 4 years at the NBA. And we were opening up offices around the world. And I was traveling around the world and kind of was almost like a evangelist to build that NBA brand. And now you look back a generation later, almost 30 years later, how the growth of international, both the players and our influence around the world, is pretty amazing. And it really all started, 30 years ago with David Stern's vision, starting with the Dream Team in 1992 and then again in 1996. So spent 4 years there, then got into the agency space and spent close to 7 or 8 years in the agency space, primarily at Octagon, which is a big global sports marketing agency, working with brands to help them activate their sports marketing activities. Then I had a stint with the NFL where I worked with new sponsors and bringing in new partners to the league. And then I kind of had a shift to work at the Nielsen Company, which is kind of an odd shift, but Nielsen is the kind of de facto currency for measuring audiences. And sports is some of the most valuable content on television, and led the sports group for about 10 years there. And then in 2018, after having been there for a while, PASPA, which was the law on the books that was keeping sports betting illegal outside of the state of Nevada, was repealed by the Supreme Court. So I started working in the sports betting space, and for the last 7 years, have been working as an advisor, investor in different things around sports betting, media, technology. Along the whole time I was in sports, I always had this passion for education. So in 2004, so 21 years ago, I was fortunate enough to get a teaching gig as an adjunct professor at NYU, the Stern School of Business. And 42 semesters later, I am teaching and so energized by my students. I've had over close to 3,000 students over the last 20 years and teach a sports business class. It's kind of sports sponsorship and media. And then I also teach the business of sports betting class, which is more of a recent thing. But that's really, I'm actually at NYU today at the Stern School, and just really, really love working with students, helping shape the next generation of leaders in the sports business.
Awesome. Stephen, quite the resume. You're definitely the person that we want to talk to about careers in sports management, which I have noticed has been absolutely blowing up. More and more of my students in the last, I'd say particularly 3 years, have been asking about careers in sports management. I want to shout out a couple of them in particular, Caitlin and Chase, and I never asked for their permission, so I'm not going to put their last names out there. But a lot of the questions I'm going to ask you today are questions that they've been asking me. So I'd like for you to start by just sharing, sports management. Tell us a little bit more about what it is. It's a very broad term, and also talk about the different kinds of jobs that a degree in sports management can kind of lead to.
Yes, good question. Sports management is a very broad term, but to me, it really means anything on the business side of sports, right? Anything beyond the game that's on the field, right? So that could be a variety of things. And to transitioning into the career paths, just looking at, at NYU today, college athletics has become such a big business, particularly with the emergence of NIL and all of these huge budget deficits at the athletic departments, right? So all these athletic departments are having to figure out a way to generate more revenue. And the athletes are figuring out a way now that they can finally earn revenue while they're playing. So whenever there's a opportunity for revenue, or there's an opportunity to leverage that name, image, and likeness, there's a need for more people to help them figure out how to do that. So there's a lot of jobs now in the college athletic space. So that's number one. Number two is you also have these, obviously the pro major sports properties. I worked at the NBA, I've worked at the NFL, MLB, so on and so forth. Those are the big ones, and they hire a lot of folks, and they're always looking for new people and new talent to help grow those leagues. But I think one of the most interesting things in the sports property space is the emerging leagues, right? Think about in the last 5 or 6 years, particularly on the women's side, unrivaled, right? It's this new 3-on-3 women's league. There's a new volleyball league that's exclusively for women. Pickleball has become a huge sport professionally. There's the growth in women's sports is really just something I've been following and so excited about. You look at the valuations for both the WNBA and the NWSL, the women's soccer and women's basketball leagues. They've 10x in the last 2 or 3 years, right? So with the 10x growth in valuation, there's just a lot more jobs, a lot more need for really good talent to come in and think about how to monetize these incredibly exciting assets. So that's a really big growth area. What else? Recreational and youth sports. There's a platform called Game Changers that was recently purchased by Dick's Sporting Goods. It's got about $100 million valuation. And what it does is it records youth sports where parents are taking video of their kids' baseball games or softball games or soccer games, and they're allowing parents, friends, who can't attend those games to watch it on a live stream, right? So sports technology, youth sports has become like $100 billion business. brands. People don't realize the importance of thinking about sports in a different kind of way at a brand. Brands, obviously the endemic brands, the Nike, the Adidas, the Prince tennis rackets, golf clubs, and all the sports equipment, but brands that are not endemic to sport, like an American Express, like a Chase Bank, like all these insurance companies who are investing in sports. All you need to do is watch one football game and you'll see 6 different insurance companies advertising over the course of a football game, right? So all of these brands are using sports as an effective vehicle to help them sell whatever they do, whether it's carbonated beverages, whether it's insurance, whether it is a bank. So these are really, really a lot of jobs there. And the other thing, I mentioned this quickly before, but the most valuable content in the world right now is sports. So from the media perspective, whether that be traditional media, as we think about the NBCs and the ESPNs and the Foxes of the world, and the new media, and Netflix has jumped really big into sports. Amazon jumped really big into sports. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunities in the sports media world now. And then the last thing, and it's not really the last thing, but sports betting, right? It's like I talked about how in 2018, when PASPA was repealed, now 38 states have legalized sports betting. So sports betting and fantasy is really just another way for sports fans to engage and stay close to sports. And there's tremendous opportunities there. So many of my students have gone on to work in sports betting at the DraftKings and FanDuels of the world. And then when you think about sports as well, recently the Ryder Cup took place here in New York, and the US Open just happened, the US Open tennis. Those are huge, massive events. They require a lot of feet on the ground and a lot of staff and a lot of people to pull those off. So operations is also a huge growth area because there's so many more events, and the events are getting bigger and better, and they just need people who have experts in that. And the final thing I'll say is, because I worked in investment banking, when I first got into my career, sports has now become an asset class. So there's all these different jobs in sports finance that didn't really exist before, just like they have a healthcare investment banking group, or they've got a hospitality investment banking group, or an insurance investment banking group. Now sports is a vertical within these major banks because sports finance has become a huge piece of the work that they're getting.
I'm a sports junkie myself, and I know indisputably I would have been one of the people who would have been looking at this in college had it been around back in the day. Now, you told me there are like 400 programs now at colleges across the country. Does that include majors, minors, and certificate programs? Like, what's kind of the breakdown of those 400 programs?
Yeah, it's really a mix. I think a lot of them are graduate programs. There's minors and majors. I mean, I teach at Stern, so I'm in the business school. And within the business school, we have what's called an EMT minor, Entertainment Media Technology. And within that, there's sports. But we also have a sports management program at NYU, both at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. So just at a university like NYU, there's an undergraduate sports management, there's a graduate school of sports management, and within the Stern School of Business, we have kind of a entertainment media technology major, which sports is part of. So just even at our school, there's 3 different kind of paths for people who are interested in this business.
Can you talk about the type of student for whom a sports career could be good for?
Well, I would say, being passionate about sports is not enough, right? A lot of people are just say, hey, I love the Yankees, I want to go work in sports. You really have to, because there's 100 million people who say that they love sports. So you really have to have a thought to an angle of something you're really good at. So what do I mean by that? If you really, really enjoy data and analytics, sports could be something that you could pursue, right? Like I talked a lot about the brands and the sponsorships going on. There's a whole big group of folks who are thinking about sports sponsorship, not so much from negotiating the deals, but evaluating those deals. So they're doing all kinds of analysis and ROI on understanding how that drove the needle for their brand. So they're really sophisticated in terms of understanding fan behavior, looking at how fans are consuming that content and what they're purchasing and what they're buying. So it's a whole kind of, I came up with this word fanalytics, right? So fanalytics is all about consuming and engaging fan behavior, and then what that means from a consumption perspective. And is that sponsorship, in many cases at a major sports property, tens of millions of dollars? What's the ROI on that? So there's a lot of people thinking about that. So sports and analytics is one thing. And people who just love to sell, because sports is really all about selling, right? In many cases. You're trying to sell tickets, you're trying to sell sponsorships, you're trying to sell an idea, you're trying to sell an athlete to a brand, and you're trying to sell a product. So sales is a big part of it too. So if you have any interest in sales, sports can really be a great career for you as well.
Friends, one of the best things I've ever done in my career is professional sales. I did it for 6 years at 2 Fortune 500 companies. And I used that training and experience I gained from 1995 to 2001 every single day. If you think about it, nothing happens in life without a sale. I mean, you buy a pair of jeans, somebody had to do something to persuade you to pick up that pair of jeans. You go interview and you get a job, you made the sale. You persuaded them to hire you over the competition. So for you students out there, any training that you can get in professional sales, it can be B2B, business to business, or B2C, business to consumer. It's going to help you enormously for the rest of your career. You know, when I was in seminary, Dallas Theological Seminary, I took a class with an internationally known legendary preacher named Dr. Howard Hendricks. And I was kind of surprised by this at the time. I'm not so surprised now. And what was I surprised about? It was how he answered this question from a student in class. Because we're talking about all this spiritual stuff, Bible, ministry, missions, you know, and the student says to him, like, what's the best thing that I can do to be prepared for ministry? What did Howard Hendricks say? Go get a job in sales. Learn how to sell, and it will serve you well for the rest of your life. So let's go back to the data analytics. One of the students, Chase, who I referred to earlier, he's really into sports statistics like that. He's a statistics junkie, strong math student. Want to combine the two of them. So for somebody like that, what would you like recommend for like a course of study?
Right. So I mentioned this sports betting before, the growth of sports betting. In my class tonight, I have someone who's the lead analyst at a major sports betting company coming in to speak to my class. And they're looking for people who are really adept at, and now with the emergence of AI, looking at data. And so there's let's say there was a baseball playoff game tonight, which I think there is. We could look at all of the statistics around performance of the pitchers who are starting, all of the batters against those pitchers, what's the weather like. There's all kinds of different factors to be able to model out what the lines are around players' performance, around team performance, and quickly diving in. And people at FanDuel and DraftKings and BetMGM and all these different betting companies need really smart data analytics folks to help them model out potential player performance. So that's one example of a sports kind of business job. Of course, there's things for the players, working for a general manager, working for a coaching staff, for scouting and things like that, who are thinking about their draft picks. There's people who are thinking about salary caps and things like that. But I wouldn't say that's more on the field. But off the field, because of the emergence of sports betting and fantasy sports and things like that, there's a lot of jobs for people who have a interest in that to potentially explore that as a potential career option.
So where does the student start? This is what I've, question I get all the time. Like, this is really fascinating me. I feel like I would love this work, but it feels a little bit overwhelming. Like, I'm a high school junior, I'm a high school senior, I'm a high school sophomore. Like, where do I start?
Right. I think it really starts with thinking about what interests you around sports, because again, like I said, there's event management, there is working for a team or a league, there's the media piece of it, there's the finance piece of it. There's so many different avenues, and start to do your homework, start to do your research, and figure out where you think you would most align with your skill set and your interest. So that's number one. Number two is start building relationships. I tell all my students the three most important words in the sports business. Number one, relationships. Number two, relationships. Number three, relationships. You've got to build a network, because this business is really small. And I heard something the other day, which I thought was really, really interesting. Your network is your net worth, right? Because your network is super important to, one, open doors to get that first job. Like I talked about that first gig I got, that summer internship at Disney. So you need to start getting internships. You need to start getting some experiences, and you need to do that by starting to network. And that happens on LinkedIn, right? Using LinkedIn to set up coffee chats or even just Zoom meetings to talk to people who are in the business, learn what they do, learn what opportunities there are, and just get yourself smart about all the different aspects of the business, and start reading. There's so many different free newsletters. I mean, obviously there's a lot of paid resources that you can use, but there's a lot of free newsletters that you can use, like a Front Office Sports, like a Sports Business Journal. They have all these free newsletters. Start reading and start getting yourself really, really smart about the business.
So, friends, you guys know I like you because our listeners know I went to Michigan State, so I have to put up with Steven's Go Blue stuff over here all the time, and he's sporting green on me too. Nothing's worse than a guy wearing green talking blue out of his mouth. And I know he's going to talk about Michigan with this next question, but I like you guys enough to put up with it. So, what are some of the top programs that you really like for someone that wants to go to school and concentrate?
Well, you said it. You teed it up. Obviously, Michigan is one of the top programs in the country, and I've been fortunate enough to not only go there myself, but 2 of my 3 children have also been Michigan graduates, and they have a really, really strong sports management program. And I've sat on the board. I've been on the board of advisors for the last 10 plus years at the University of Michigan. So I've been really involved in helping shape the curriculum. And we started this big sports business conference, which actually coincidentally is taking place this weekend, where we've really become the preeminent sports conference amongst universities in the country. We're going to expect over 1,200 visitors, and we've sold out 1,200 tickets for this upcoming event this weekend. But what I will say is what separates Michigan from a lot of the other programs is the network. We have a really, really incredible network. And I came up with this tagline for the Michigan sports management program. ESPN is good, but the best network in sports is Michigan. All
right. I've reached my quota of how much Michigan stuff one. I can take. Give me some more schools.
Yes. So one other program that's really, really great is Syracuse. They've done a really, really good job. The University of Texas has a great program. The UMass Amherst has a great program. NYU has a great program where I teach now, and I've been teaching for the last 20 years. So there's about Rice in Texas has a great program. So Ohio University, Bowling Green. So you could do your homework, but there's about 20. University of Florida has a great program. There's about 20 or 30. Elon, my friend Bill Squadron, has done a phenomenal job building the sports management program at the Elon in North Carolina. So there's about 20 to 30 really, really strong sports management programs, and those are a good place to start. But I don't think you necessarily need to major in sports management, right? If the school you're going to doesn't have a sports management program, you could just be in the business school, and you'd be an undergraduate business school and take some marketing courses. And I'm sure most schools at this point have at least 1 or 2 sports management courses that if they don't have that as a major.
So a lot of times under the communication school, some places literally have a degree in like brand management. Is that a pathway? Because when you're talking about people having brands and all that, it seems like that could be an angle if somebody pursued brand management and then, actively did a network. Or do you see that as a disconnect?
No, brand management and communications is a great path. My own daughter, she was a communications major at Michigan. She was not in the sports management program, and she ended up getting a job at Disney and now works for ESPN. So she was a communications major, and she chose the media route. So there's a lot of ways to break into the business. And at the end of the day, it's marketing and sales. Sports is about marketing and sales. So if you understand marketing, sports marketing is just a subset of general marketing. It's just a little different because of the unique passion that people have for sports and that affinity that is a little bit different. But at the end of the day, if you're a marketing degree or a business degree or a communications degree, those are all great potential paths to a career in the sports management, which is, again, very, very general.
Now, Caitlin, my other student, her passion started when she just started volunteering with the local football team and couldn't get enough of it. So in her case, she just likes the everyday workings of what goes on in running a sporting event. Is there also a path within the field for someone that likes that operational side?
Yeah, I mentioned that before. The U.S. Open has grown over the last few years. I think, it's become one of the hottest tickets in New York. They have so many brand activations. It's such a huge event. The Ryder Cup just took place, and I live in the New York region at Bethpage. The amount of people and thought that needs to go into running an event, or just even a Yankees game, right? And there's 162 games, 82 of them at home, right? Or 81 of them at home. There's an incredible demand for people who are just really, really good at logistics and running events, whether it's golf or tennis or baseball or football. And game day operations is a really important piece of the puzzle. And the nice thing about that is there's a lot of talk about AI replacing jobs. They will never replace sports, right? They could potentially be a nice add-on to sports and help understand fans better and help target marketing. But at the end of the day, sports is still played on the field or on the court or on the ice, whatever it is. And that'll always happen live, and there's going to be real people, and AI can't replace that. And you also are not going to be able to replace fans. Fans are going to be there, and the operations are going to happen. So you're going to need people who are really good at that. And in most sports management programs, they have an operations kind of major or an operations concentration. So if someone's interested in that, they should go in sports management and kind of focus on that.
So there are a few other schools that I often think of as being strong in sports management. A lot of the ones that you said are some of the, the first ones that come to mind. But some of the other ones that often I think of, and I wonder if you have any experience with these, are Indiana University in Bloomington, University of South Carolina in Columbia, Drexel right in Philly, and NC State in Raleigh. Do you have any knowledge of any of those programs at all?
Yeah, no, I know quite a bit about the University of South Carolina. I know it's a great program. A friend of mine recently got involved with that and spearheading a bunch of effort to just continue to grow that business or that sports management program. And he's doing a really, really nice job in terms of tying in the business community of Charlotte, right? So, which is not that far from Columbia, South Carolina, because Charlotte's the headquarters of NASCAR. They've got a bunch of professional teams there. So it's really helpful when there are a bunch of kind of pro teams and things like that for people to intern at. I mean, of course, if it's a more rural college town, you could do internships for the university. But when there's pro teams within an hour or two drive, they generate a lot of opportunities to get more internships. And as like I said before, and you and I both have said this, it's very difficult to break in this business. A lot of people want to be in it. So it really all starts from building those relationships and getting those internships and getting your foot in the door, because your internships are going to give you that experience you need to hopefully get to a full-time gig when you graduate.
One of the things I love about South Carolina's program, and I have a student from Colorado in that program right now who's loving it, they have a unique partnership with the Masters in Augusta because it's only 70 minutes away. So all their sports management majors get internships and get to work. They get that experience working on the Masters. And from that, they go to the Lakers. They go to all over the place. They're not confined to that golf world. So they've got that, that set up. And I'm sure other schools do as well. But that's one that I've been really impressed with, the internship, kind of what you talked about, like school to internship to getting into the network.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not sports specific. No one thinks just because you work at the Masters that you need to go work in the golf business, right? It's all about knowing how to run an event, how to manage a sponsorship activation. It's knowing how to manage athletes and amplify their brands, right? So no one generally pigeonholes you, especially so early in your career. I mean, my career started at the NBA, but I went to go work at Octagon and I worked across 6 different sports. And then I went to work at the NFL, and then I work at Nielsen, right, where I worked across every sport who had TV, which is pretty much every sport. So it really doesn't matter if your first internship is in golf, if it's in basketball, if it's in tennis. It's just about getting that first internship and getting some experience and getting to build a network. I can't emphasize that enough. And I say this over and over again. You need to build relationships and you need to build a network, because that's how you're going to continue to advance. That's how you're going to continue to get jobs. And that's how you're going to continue to be successful.
And friends, I hope you heard Stephen's advice on that, because that applies to a lot of jobs, right? Not what you know, but who you know, right? Like, it really is true. And that's why those people skills, those networking skills, you know, they will take you so far. And in my experience, they take you farther than a brand name degree takes you.
Absolutely. I mean, LinkedIn didn't exist when I had to get that first job at Disney, that first internship, but LinkedIn should be your best friend.
Friends, this concludes part 1 of my interview with Stephen Master, one of the world's foremost experts on the subject of careers in sports business and sports management. We hope you'll join us next week for the final part. All right, friends, it's time for our college spotlight, and this time it's with a student, Carmen Chavez. She'll be telling us what we need to know about Duke University.
And now it's time for our college spotlight of the week.
Friends, it was really exciting for me to connect with Carmen Chavez, who I interviewed 5.5 years ago on this podcast. And she had just made a college decision at that point. And now she's back and she's graduated actually a year ago. You know, she graduated. So she's doing some reflection. And I thought you could benefit from her and her reflection. So she starts out in part 1. She gives her background. She shares a major obstacle she encountered that really kind of impacted her college experience. And she shares her career plans. And then she tells us what she thinks Duke University does extremely well. And then she tells us what she feels Duke needs to change to become an even better school. Hope you enjoy part 1 of 2 with Carmen Chavez. Friends, I'm here with Carmen Chavez from Miami, Florida. Hi, Carmen.
Hello.
Our longtime listeners might recognize that name because I interviewed Carmen 5.5 years ago. Can you believe it's been that long?
As soon as I realized it was 5.5 years, it took me a second and it still didn't feel real. It still didn't. It's like too much.
I'm trying to remember, when I interviewed you, had you started at Duke yet? Or were you just, or was it your freshman year or were you a high school senior? Do you remember?
I think I hadn't even gotten in yet. I think so.
No, you had gotten in because I think you shared your story, how you were deferred in ED. Remember? And you moved on because they sent you the letter that said 5 to 10% chance, you know, if you're deferred. And I remember you saying that's it. I'm not getting in. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
And then you got in Northwestern in regular, and then you got off the wait list. So you're deferred. So you shared all that story, but maybe you hadn't started yet. So friends, we have told you we're going to bring more student voices. And this goes all the way back to an email way before we had SpeakPipe, where a listener sent in a question and said, could you kind of follow the life of a student? You know, and our longtime listeners know I did 3 interviews with Chika and Wosu, who actually is at Miami, Miami.
Oh,
So we did it
cool.
like before she started halfway. And now she's still at Miami in their med school. She's in Miami forever.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to do
That's
part
cool.
4, maybe when she's like a doctor or something. So Carmen is back. And, you know, if you haven't heard part 1 of Carmen 5.5 years ago, it's up on yourcollegeboundkid.com. But she's going to talk a little bit about her Duke experience and just give us some pearls of wisdom. So why don't you start by just, you know, kind of updating us a little bit about your time at Duke.
Yeah. So my first year was in 2020, so it was very different, I think, than most people's freshman years. So that was an interesting experience. Overall, though, I remember feeling safe on campus. I remember that was a big deal, which campuses like felt safe or not. Duke definitely did a good job with that, I felt. So that was fun. Freshman year was a lot, and I came in thinking I wanted to do math and public policy. Quickly, I realized that wasn't really the best fit for me. I then switched to econ because to me, I was like, okay, that's kind of both of those things combined. That seems, closer to what I want. And it was very interesting and it's something I really like, but it wasn't like the thing I wanted to study. And so sophomore year, I realized because of a few mutual friends and like really well timed experiences that I wanted to do architecture, design, urban planning. And this had never occurred to me like in my life up until that point. So it was like a little bit overwhelming. But I had mutual friends that were just that semester, like right when we got on campus, starting a new club on campus, Our Urban Future. And it's just an urban design, urban studies interest group. And it was the first of its kind at Duke, because Duke doesn't have anything urban design, architecture. Just the closest thing we have is art history, and that can get kind of a little bit limited if you want to do design, right? And so I found a good group of people there, and I found a lot of things to do on campus through Our Urban Future. It was one of my favorite things about campus. But unfortunately, I think it was that semester that, what is this, first semester, sophomore year, I developed a chronic pain condition, which lasted up until this past year. So, like the rest of my college experience. And it was very, very draining, and it just completely changed, I think, the trajectory of my college career. It was very tiring. It was just a lot. And so all the excitement I had, like, oh wow, like I realized what I wanted to do. And like COVID restrictions were starting to fall, so were infection rates. And like just at that time is when I developed it. I was having like migraines every day. It was very like tough. So that was a little bit of a shock, and so that continued until I graduated. But I still had a very good time, specifically I think with that design group, that urban studies group. I think that was like my lighthouse, like that was the thing that I spent the very little energy I had, I spent it there. And so that was a lot of fun. And I think that just speaks to like when you find what you want to do, when you feel it click, it really can do so much for you. And it's not just about, okay, I know what I want to do now and that's it. It really is like emotionally fulfilling, like everything. So good.
Couple of follow-up questions. And, Carmen has shared with me off air about the pain condition, so which we've talked and commiserated about that. I do hate that impacted your college experience so much.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why so many colleges have questions in their custom prompts about persistence, perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Miami, that used to be their custom prompt for years. They changed it a couple
Really?
years ago. It
Oh,
talked about
wow.
our mascot is the ibis, and it went on and on about how it overcomes adversity, and you had to write about adversity you'd overcome. But
Oh,
the
wow.
reason why is because they know, and there's in 4 years of your life, you're going to encounter some trials and tribulations. In your case, it
Yes.
was health. For somebody else, it could be something relationships, could be roommate, could be parents, or a friend or something, or a boyfriend. It could be academic stuff, right? It could be like emotional stuff, which can be all kinds of different things like depression and, different things, anxiety, or maybe people are having other challenges with, whatever, eating disorder, and whatever it is. Like there's all kinds of things. And then or it can be financial, like
Yeah.
there's just a lot of different things. And so like colleges want to know, do you have that grit or that tenacity or that perseverance to not quit when things get tough? Because look at it, you did all. Friends, I'm sitting here with the Duke alum wearing a Duke
Me
alum
too.
sweatshirt right
Very
here,
true.
holding it up proudly.
Mm-hmm.
So she made it through.
Mm-hmm.
You made it through. I have a question for you. I know from talking to you that the power of Duke's campus really had a soothing impact on you. That wasn't just like first visit, but that's something that stuck with you throughout your whole time there. Do you think that had anything to do with you looking into architecture, like just realizing the power of atmospherics to sort of impact the mental state or anything like that? Or do you think those things are totally detached?
No, I think you're completely right about that. I think something very unique about Duke's campus, two things. Is first there's a freshman only campus. I don't know many other colleges. I can't name any that do that. I'm sure some do. But that and the campuses being architecturally distinct is so interesting in and of itself. Like once you switch to the sophomore campus, things are different. Like you interact with people differently. You don't bump into people the same way anymore. There's no one place for people, because that's also when people start to really specialize in their own like education as opposed to doing like gen eds. So things change very quickly, and you start to think, okay, why are things changing? Why am I not bumping into the same people? So that definitely impacted it. But also, I think another thing important about Duke's campus is that it was designed by Julian Abel. He was an African American architect, and that is so rare. And he designed both campuses. It's very interesting, and there's so much rich history there that it's not just how beautiful it is, but it's like the depth of it, the complexity of it. It's very unique. I found it very
Especially at that
moving. And
time. At that
yeah,
time
it
of
was in
now, as opposed to
1924.
100 years ago.
1924.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So, Carmen, there's a lot more we know you could say about Duke, and you could walk us through each year by year. But
Week
I
by
think
week.
what I'll do, yeah, week by week. But Carmen has agreed to answer about 6 questions that I like to ask when I visit a campus. And our regular listeners have probably heard these questions. This is what I do when I visit a campus, and I just plop down and I talk to students, but they're just as appropriate for an alum. In fact, an alum has more perspective really on them than a student that's been there for 6 months or so. And so in you answering the questions, I'm sure you'll end up incorporating some other things of your Duke experience. So let's do it that way rather than just go year by year all the way
Of
through
course,
from
yeah.
freshman to senior year. So the first question, just open-endedly, is what are the best things about Duke in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it, the architecture. It really is, like you said, like a soothing balm to all of your trials and tribulations there. Like you can, I know it's something students talk about a lot actually, of like, oh, like I'm failing this class, or like this midterm is going to be so bad. I know it. And you just like come across the chapel, and you just like, you kind of can sit there and just like, oh my God, this it like interrupts your thoughts. It's so amazing. So of course I have to mention the architecture again, but something more education wise is the professors and the class modes. Like most of the classes I took were very small size, like except for econ 101. I think like the big econ classes, because econ is like, I think the number 2 number 3 major there. Besides those, my classes were so like personal. Like I felt like I really connected with professors, even if it wasn't something that I ended up pursuing later on. Like it wasn't my major that I graduated with. I still felt like I knew the professors and they knew me. So that was incredible. It really wasn't that hard of a transition for me, I guess, from like high school to college because of that. I know that it can be a little bit jarring to go to like pure lecture halls after like being used to a small class size, but class sizes were like 25 people or less. So that was amazing. And the professors, it's not just that you're close to them, like physically, it's they are so willing to help. I have a lot of friends at different universities, and I never got the same feeling from them. And even like universities and colleges on a smaller scale, where you think, oh, okay, this is the naturally in a smaller scale, they're more willing to help, or you're going to get the same class size or feel. I never got that from them. It might be just because I wasn't in STEM, but I almost never had to pay for a textbook, which sounds like a small thing. It really adds up, and it's really just because the professors care. Like, oh no, I don't use I don't know, a paid textbook for this class. I use this one. And if you can't afford the book, like any singular book we have to read the entire semester, please reach out to me. I will help you. And those were always very sincere things. Like even if I couldn't find a book and it wasn't a matter of financial means, I would reach out to them. They would direct me to somewhere like, oh, have you heard of this third party? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? Just so willing to help in all matters. It was truly unique. From what I've heard from my peers, it was truly unique, and it's something I think about a lot after exiting college.
Did you take advantage of flunch? Do you want to tell our listeners about what flunch is? Did you take advantage of flunch or
I
not?
had no, well, so my first 2 years, flunching wasn't that much of a thing. And especially because of COVID, first, I think flunch was completely disabled my first year. And my second year, COVID restrictions were still in place, and it still wasn't like too acceptable to do that
Mm-hmm.
yet. So I never got into the habit of it, and so it never panned out. Like, I know a lot of people did flunches though. It's a very flunch is you get a credit per semester to take a professor out for lunch or for coffee or for something, and it encourages you to create this kind of connection with professors. I know a lot of people, kind of sounds intimidating, right? A lot of people would do it in groups, and sometimes I heard it like, oh, like a professor would announce it, like, oh, I have a group of 4 taking me to flunch. We have 2 more spots open, and if you guys want to join, you can join. Like, let me know, and you can sign up for that. So,
All right, let's
very interesting.
transition, Carmen, because no place is perfect, as we know. And my second question, I'm going all the way to the opposite side. I'm going to say, where you're in power, and they make you the czar and the dictator, and they come up to Carmen Chavez and they say, Carmen, we're going to make 3 or 4 changes at Duke. Whatever you say, we're going to make those changes. What would be your recommendations to make Duke better?
I think I'm going to start every answer with architecture. I think that's a good place to start.
You're going into the right field.
I'm glad you think so. I think that a connection to the city, to Durham, the city that Duke is in, would be so, so important to implement. So in 2018, 2019, there was this proposed subway line that would connect basically the triangle, like the 3 universities in the triangle, and then connect them to the cities they lived in, right? It didn't go through because of Duke. Duke stepped in and made what sounds like a baloney excuse, and many people on campus are very frustrated with this. This is all to say a better connection to Durham. Durham is such a good city, I'm so happy. Not that I went to Duke specifically, but like, of course the university was amazing and all the opportunities were amazing, but getting to know Durham was so priceless. And if it wasn't for Duke, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But I think more students miss out on that. It can be a little intimidating because it's like, it's Duke's West Campus, the iconic campus, is referred to a campus in the forest. So it's very secluded, it's very removed from the city. And so that would be one of my main things, is to connect Duke students, just Duke in general, to Durham. It's so amazing. And I know that I'm going to visit Duke again for alumni events and stuff, but also I'm going to be visiting Durham. Like, I know that that's going to be one of my main reasons to be there at the alumni events. So that would be my first
Well,
thing.
you've met my youngest daughter, Joy, and she, even though she now works at the rival school, Chapel Hill, she
All
lives in
love.
Durham, and she loves
Oh, there you
Durham.
go. Durham is
Yeah.
amazing. Durham is so amazing. You have to go there to visit it, to experience it. There's no way to summarize it. But that would be my first thing. My second thing would be about like establishing what I just talked about, like these small class sizes and keeping them like that. Because we've talked about it, how financial cuts are really changing the structure of the university right now. And I've heard from other alumni that Duke is like consolidating advising and other stuff, but also I hear that it's happening with classes too, and class sizes, there's a risk that they may become larger. So something to codify that I would love to do, because I've heard this fear from alumni that like that is going to change. And something that changed actually while I was there was a freshman only writing class requirement, and it could be anything you wanted. There were so many different topics. It was like the most random things. It was something about like a Barbie movie, and then there was the one I took was like love and medieval Europe. That has nothing to do with what I studied, but you just need to take one of them. I loved that class so much. It was one of my favorite classes ever. That has been removed. So I would put that back, And there's a lot of speculation that is removed because of a graduate student union problems that like the university was pushing against the union. I would put that back. I would want to give that funding to last for a very long time. I know a lot of people speak about that first year class so fondly. And like I mentioned, there's a freshman only university. So that coupled with like this freshman requirement of writing, it creates such a specific experience for freshman year where I've noticed people who haven't had the writing credit. Like it was my last 2 years where I think I was with freshmen that hadn't had that. It kind of changes. They're like immediately more like trying to start on the sophomore year experience like a little bit harder than jumping to it. And I think the writing credit is like a good thing that like slows you down. It's like, okay, you're studying econ. You're going to take a writing class about like Barbies and feminism, or you're going to take something about, I don't know, you're in STEM, but you're going to take something about like green cities, just something I think that is so important and that is missing now. So I would put that back.
So I'm going to ask you about one other thing you've shared with me in the past and see if you still feel this way. And then another complaint I sometimes have had from Duke families.
Sure.
See what you think. So in the past, you've talked about not just a level of wealth, but a level of wealth and detachment from the way everyday people live by just people coming from sort of enclaves of wealthy bubbles and just not relating or, to everyday people. And that there's, in your opinion, too high a percentage of students like that at Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still feel that way? I know we talked about that earlier on in your college career. And just so you know, Carmen is not coming from low socioeconomic status either. So when she says that, you take notice of that.
Yeah.
Is it okay for me to say this? I'll delete it if you want me to.
Go ahead. I know what you're going to. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you didn't get financial aid to go to Duke.
At all.
So that's not like that. When somebody says that and they come from full Pell, that's one thing. But if somebody says that and they're paying full, it's something you take notice of. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I still think it to be true. If you're just like a regular person and somebody listening to this may be like, no, I've had like contact with like wealth. Like I'm maybe not from that type of wealth, but I've had contact with it. Like I can handle it. If you are a regular person, you have no clue what you will walk into. It is so different. I don't know. I don't think anything could have prepared me for it. So it is quite a shock. It is part of the, I think, culture shock of going to like an elite university is experiencing this. So I still do think it to be true, but it's something you have to come to terms to while you're there if you have the privilege of going to like an elite university.
Are there any examples, Carmen, that you could give for someone who's like, what is she talking about?
That's actually a great question. I don't think examples come to mind besides like just like in general cavalier student attitudes about everything. Like people who I think I don't know if this will be a great example, but I remember during my first years, like COVID restrictions were still very much in place. Just students being cavalier about getting infected because I think it was a matter of like, oh, if I get infected, like it's fine. Like I'll just, it's no problem for me to go to the hospital. It will not be a problem at all, even though it was still viewed as very dangerous at the time. So I think that came from a place of wealth. Like I'm picturing specific interactions and just overall, the like work hard, play hard motto of Duke. That's how it's advertised. I think that's a big appeal of Duke. A lot of people who you will find only play hard, and that comes to me, it seems, from a place of wealth. A lot of people at Duke only play hard. They don't really work hard. And that seems to be, when you're there, it seems like the predominant culture. It's a little bit suffocating, honestly. And it seems like a lot of people there that are only there to play hard are there like as a social activity, as opposed to like, I was there because my parents came from completely different continents, came with nothing here. They wanted something better for themselves. They worked really hard, and that's why I was able to go there without financial aid. Like my mother worked so hard, And so to see so many opportunities, so much of my hard work that like took for me to get here, and I wasn't accepted like first decision. I wasn't a perfect student. I remember working so hard for this, like putting so many things on the back burner and seeing other people treat what is to me an immense opportunity, like something that nobody in my family has ever experienced before, as a joke, as a way to like have fun for 4 years, as a way to just meet people. It seemed like this wasn't an opportunity for them. It was just like a check that they had to do before they got, I'm sure, a job that they already had lined up for quite some time, just in, I don't know, daddy's company or something. So it really hurts if you're from a background where you work hard for this, where I'm sure everybody listening to your podcast is from this background where at least you want it really bad, or it's important to you in some way to get into college. So it can be quite a lot. It can be quite the shock.
Friends, this concludes my interview with Carmen Chavez from Miami, Florida. Hope you join us next week for the final part. Friends, on Monday's episode, I'm going old school with an admissions tip, with a big number, and a recommended resource. And we'll take a question from a listener that Susan and Kate will join me to answer. And we'll have the final part of Heath Einstein's interview on what colleges look for in teacher recommendations. Friends, you know, I always find myself inspired by really short, succinct, but compelling mottos. For example, who can forget Nike's "Just Do It"? You know, we picked up as a family and we moved 800 miles from Westchester, Pennsylvania, all the way to Fairburn, Georgia, for our kids to attend a Christian school that's here that we really liked. And one thing that really drew me was their motto. It's all over when you visit the school, look at the literature, and it just simply says, every child prepared to impact the world for Jesus Christ. That was powerful. I'm personally inspired every time I read, state our mission statement for our podcast, making college knowledge available to all. That inspires me. I founded a company, and our motto is ignite your child's future. And every time I read that, see it on the website or look at it, I get inspired. Can't see it enough. But one of the best ones is one that KIPP has. KIPP Charter School Network, largest charter school network in the country. I worked there for 14 years. And that motto is so powerful that Jay Matthews, nationally renowned educational writer, Pulitzer Prize winner for the Washington Post, he literally wrote a book on KIPP. He told the KIPP story. And he used the 4 words was the title of his book. Now, why am I saying all this to you? It's because I think if you can master these 4 words and this motto, it can take you very far. So what are the 4 words? What's the KIPP motto? What's Jay Matthews' title of his book? What are the 4 words I want you to master? Here they are. Work hard, be nice. Work hard, be nice. Work hard, be nice. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. Big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an admission officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our international admissions expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.